Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about the biggest sleeper at each position for fantasy football in 2021. Inside of the video, I'm going to go in depth on one running back, one wide receiver, one quarterback, and one tight end that I feel like is going at an extreme value right now because people are sleeping at where they are drafting them inside of the current average draft position, and I believe they're going to be finishing much higher than where they are getting drafted to be right now. But before we get into this breakdown of these four players, I want to ask if you do end up enjoying this video at any point to please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below, because not only is it free, I put out content every single day to try to help you guys win your 2021 fantasy football championship. Once we get into August, in a couple of days, there's going to be 2 videos every single day to help you guys get that edge on your opponents in fantasy football, as well as please make sure to hit that like button down below, because that helps boost this video up the algorithm so that more beautiful people like yourself can see today's video. Also, if you guys want even more additional fantasy football content, I post one video every single day on Monday through Friday on the Awesemo Fantasy Football YouTube channel, and I do post articles on their website as well, all linked in the description as well as in the pinned comments, so you guys can get extra content from me. So without further ado, let's get into it. We are going to begin with a running back that didn't necessarily play in a bunch of games last season, but was a guy that I was looking to target, and this season, unlike last season, I believe it is genuinely going to be paying off, because this team has done a full-on 180 compared to last season. Running back of the New England Patriots running back Damien Harris, underdog ADP, running back 28, overall pick 86.6. Now, when it came to Damien Harris last season, I saw some excellent upside out of a running back that didn't get too much playing time in his rookie season, but in 2020, he was going to step up and fill this role that he was going to be given. Obviously, they did have just a metric fuck ton of running backs getting touches last year, but they lose Rex Burkhead. Sony Michel has seemed to fall completely out of favor after that guy helped them win a Super Bowl or 2 in New England. So now it's just going to be Damien Harris, who is being looked at as the lead back on this team based upon current reports out of the Patriots facility. So it seems like Damien Harris is going to be the guy getting the lion's share of carries in New England. This Patriots team is doing a full 180 for a variety of reasons. Last year, they go into the season, the weapons are not the greatest. Obviously, Julian Edelman is looked at to be pretty good, but he gets hurt really quick, and then they're relying on Damiere Byrd. They're relying on Jacoby Myers. So it was a pretty shitty situation for what Cam Newton was given, and then after Cam Newton got COVID, they were kind of on a roll at the beginning of the season, but then after he got COVID, this was just a complete and utter disaster of a team. But then they go into the offseason, and Bill Belichick does things that Bill Belichick has never done before as a head coach. This motherfucker is signing every single player. He is spending up. He sees Jonnu Smith. He sees Hunter Henry. He's like, you know what? Do you remember when Gronk and Aaron Hernandez were super good in New England? We're doing that shit again. He adds those guys. He brings in all of these other wide receivers. He's trying to assemble a much better offense for Cam Newton. They obviously draft Mac Jones, so if Cam Newton ends up sucking and doesn't look super good, then boom, you just pull the plug on Cam Newton and you throw Mac Jones out there. Then on defense, the defense all of last season was not there because they fucking opted out before the season even started. The Patriots defense was deflated like a football when they're playing up against the Indianapolis Colts. So it was not the best look last season, but in the offseason, they start bringing in more players on defense. So this is going to be a completely different team to what we saw last season when the dynasty seemed to have crumbled in New England. For fantasy football, what I'm looking for in a running back is a player that is on a team that has a solid defense and a pretty solid offense so that they're going to be able to run the ball out later in games. Last season, the New England Patriots did not have much of a chance to do that at all, and the Patriots are an offense that does really look to establish the run inside of the game, so I was very surprised that they weren't able to do that, but it's also not surprising when your defense is complete and utter dog shit like they were last season, which I expect to be a lot better. Now, I know what you're thinking right now, Nick. There are definitely outliers to that argument. There are players like Christian McCaffrey, whose defense sucks ass, and week in, week out, Christian McCaffrey is the best running back for fantasy football, and I agree with that. And that there are going to be outliers every single year at the running back position, wide receiver position, who, even though you're looking at a wide receiver to do X and the team does the complete opposite and they still end up succeeding, same thing with running backs, it is a good kind of plan of attack to be looking for a running back on a team with a strong defense. I think the Patriots are just going to be a much better team as a whole in 2021. Last season, even with the defense being so bad, even with the offense being completely lackluster, still played pretty well in 10 games, finishing as the running back, 53 in PPR, 50 in half PPR, and 44 in standard. If you only play in 10 games, you're not going to get anywhere near cracking the top 30 at the running back position, unless you're Christian McCaffrey, who drops like 30 points a game, averaging 9.1 PPR points per game, 8.9 half PPR points per game, and 8.6 standard points per game. Meaning, from a points per game perspective, he was running back 39 in PPR, tied with Wayne Gallman, Latavius Murray, and Jamal Williams, running back 36 in half PPR, and the running back 33 in standard. On the season, Damien Harris did look pretty solid. He had 137 carries, which is 13.7 per game, ranking 32nd at running back, but with even limited touches, in reality, he had 691 rushing yards, 69.1 per game. Very nice for Damien Harris. He had he finished number 21 at the running back position in rushing yards. The thing where it starts to go downhill a little bit for Damien Harris is in the target and reception category. 7 targets on the season, 0.7 per game. That's not really going to cut it. 5 receptions, 0.5 per game, 52 receiving yards, and just 2 total touchdowns. While sure, I don't expect Damien Harris to be catching a million balls a game like Austin Eckler or like Alvin Kamara, like Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, I expect Damien Harris to get an uptick in targets, because if you look at his collegiate stats at Alabama, he was actually a pretty solid pass catcher. In 2018, his senior season, he had 22 receptions on 23 targets. 2017, his junior season, 12 receptions on 14 targets. 2016, 14 receptions on 16 targets. So he is a guy that can catch the ball. I understand James White is going to be used in this offense to catch passes, but don't be surprised if Damien Harris sees an uptick in targets in 2021. When Bill Belichick and this team comes out and tells you, hey, Damien Harris is going to be the lead running back, I'm going to go ahead and take that as the truth, because I believe the exact same thing. I believe that Damien Harris is by far and away the most talented running back in this backfield, with a team that is going to try to run the ball a lot with a better defense in 2021. I think people are really undermining how much potential Damien Harris has to potentially finish as a top 24 running back. And if all things go correctly, if he just starts jamming in these touchdowns, because the Patriots look like the Patriots of the past, then man, oh man, Damien Harris probably has top 15 potential, and you are finding him super late in like the 7th, the 8th, the 9th round of drafts. I'm fine taking him in the 6th round, but it seems like every single draft I am going into, people just continue to sleep on Mr. Damien Harris, who I believe has immense upside in 2021. Let me know what you guys think down below about all of these players that I'm going to be talking about, or if you think there's a bigger sleeper than Damien Harris at the running back position. Next up, we're going to be discussing a wide receiver of the Chicago Bears in Darnell. Here comes the Mooney, underdog ADP, wide receiver 51, overall pick 102.2. This week, the Chicago Bears ended up trading Anthony Miller to the Houston Texans. So that opens the door up further for Darnell Mooney. But if I'm being honest with you guys, that's not why he's on this list. If Anthony Miller was still there in Chicago, I would not have a worry in the world in drafting Darnell Mooney. But clearly, that trade had an impact on his ADP, because he is up 7.57 picks within the last week. In 16 games last year, Darnell Mooney finished as the wide receiver, 49 in PPR, 51 in half PPR, and 55 in standard, averaging 9.5 PPR points per game, 7.6 half PPR points per game, and 5.7 standard points per game. From a points per game perspective, he was wide receiver 62 in PPR, 64 and a half PPR, tied with Keelan Cole, MVS, Julian Edelman, Deshaun Jackson, and Chad Henson, and the wide receiver 73 in standard, tied with Darius Slayton. So he obviously didn't have an excellent season last year, but when you delve into the statistics of what Darnell Mooney was putting up last year, you are going to realize that Darnell Mooney is destined for a shot directly to the fucking moon in 2021. He is on a rocket ship to fantasy football stardom in 2021, and he is being picked off the board past pick 100, wide receiver 51 off the board. Wide receiver 51. Wide receiver 51, and this is the numbers that he put up last year. This guy had 98 targets, 6.1 per game, but he only had 61 receptions, 631 receiving yards, and he had 4 total touchdowns. Do you want to know why he had 98 targets and only 61 receptions? Because his quarterbacks were 9-inch Nick Foles and Kissin' Titties Mitchell Trubisky. And every single time, without fail, Darnell Mooney will be butt naked, wide open. I'm talking about where there is not a defender in the radius of this guy. He is nowhere. They're not even in the same fucking area code. And Nick Foles slings the ball 7,000 yards over his head, or Mitch Trubisky underthrows him. The ball just never came to Darnell Mooney correctly. If they actually hit Darnell Mooney in the hands or anywhere near him, because I'm not saying that this ball was even thrown close to him. This is like a moonshot out of the stadium, like that video where Pat Mahomes throws it out of Arrowhead Stadium. They have now changed their name to something different, but out of the stadium, right? And that's what it's looking like. Darnell Mooney is just always open. He's always open. And he just was not getting the ball. He had 4 total touchdowns last season. Now, going into this year, they bring in Justin Fields via the NFL draft, which was a great pick, in my opinion. They bring in Andy Dalton, and I'm not some type of Andy Dalton hater. I think Andy Dalton may be better for Darnell Mooney than a Mitch Trubisky, than a Nick Foles. So if Darnell Mooney is this great wide receiver that we saw last year, all you have to do is flip on the tape. You see Darnell Mooney always making these moves, always being able to create separation, which is very important for fantasy football. And now he is the clear wide receiver 2 on this offense. There is no doubt in my mind that anyone behind him can even surpass him to get more targets. With Anthony Miller gone, there is no reason that a Justin Fields or an Andy Dalton cannot feed Darnell Mooney. Now, I understand that maybe Darnell Mooney may start off slow because Andy Dalton isn't the best. But once Justin Fields takes over, which he should in quick time, Darnell Mooney genuinely has potential to be a flex option week in and week out that is super reliable for you, which is hard to find when you're looking at a wide receiver going in the 100 plus pick range. He wasn't even getting an exorbitant amount of target share inside of the Bears offense last year because they were still trying to figure out the Anthony Miller experiment. They were still throwing him the ball. Regardless of how bad the guy fucking sucked, they still tried to just squeeze out a little bit of usage out of him, but now he's gone. It is Darnell. Here comes the Mooney season in 2021. We are about halfway through this video, so if you guys have ended up enjoying this breakdown thus far, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below, and make sure you hit that like button as well. So next up, we're going to be talking about the quarterback here, and we got my man, Matt Ryan, Matty Ice Baby, quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons, underdog ADP, quarterback 17. Now, I planned on talking about Trevor Lawrence in this video, but Matt Ryan is going 2 to 3 picks at the quarterback position later than him, so I figured that Matt Ryan is technically the biggest sleeper because I could see him easily finishing ahead of Trevor Lawrence. Matt Ryan currently coming off the board is quarterback 17, overall ADP on underdog 139.1, down 6.18 picks in the last week, so people are starting to fall out of favor for Matt Ryan, which to me makes no fucking sense because this guy lives and breathes to be a top 12 quarterback in fantasy football off the back of just throwing the ball so many times every single game. Matt Ryan last season played in all 16 games, finished as the quarterback 12 in 4-point per passing touchdown leagues and quarterback 13 in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues, averaging 17.5 4-point per passing touchdown points per game and 20.8 6-point per passing touchdown points per game. From points per game perspective, he was the QB 16 in 4-point, tied with his division mate in Drew Brees, and quarterback 17 in 6-point. And like I said before, the reason why Matt Ryan sees so much success in fantasy football is not because this motherfucker is going to go out there and juke out the defense and rush for 50 plus yards every single game, and that just boosts him up a free 5 points every single week. It is because Matt Ryan is one of those quarterbacks that, unless he gets hurt, he is going to finish top 5 in attempts on the season, and probably, if I was to guess, will finish top 3, and could easily finish as the number 1 overall quarterback in attempts yet again in 2021. Last year, he finished as the number 1 quarterback in passing attempts with 626, 39.1 per game. That is such a crazy rate to be having to throw the ball. His protection rate last year was 27th at the quarterback position. So his offensive line was shit, and they're not much better in 2021, which means they're going to have to try to pass the ball. But I know what you might be thinking if you've been watching my videos for a while. Nick, you really like Mike Davis too. And I do, because they're going to be able to run the ball at points in the game, but they're going to have to try to throw the ball, but Mike Davis is also good at catching the ball, so that's one of the reasons why I like him. But Matt Ryan has a wide receiver core that is still pretty solid, even after losing Julio fucking Jones, one of the most athletic wide receivers ever, one of the best wide receivers to ever grace the gridiron in the NFL. They lose him. But they still have Calvin Ridley, who is the heir to the throne in Atlanta. You could see that coming for years at this point. And they still have Russell Gage. They bring in the most freak athlete of a tight end that I have ever seen. This is a guy that is getting compared to Calvin Johnson. He's a fucking tight end, and people are saying this guy's like Calvin Johnson. Kyle Pitts, that is. They still have Russell Gage. They still have other wide receivers there, and they have Mike Davis. This is an offense that is set up for success. Last year, he threw 26 passing touchdowns at 4.2% rate, 12th highest at the quarterback position. 4.2% rate, that is relatively low for Matt Ryan. That 5% rate of passing touchdowns is what you look for as the normal for a quarterback. So say a quarterback throws for 8%, you're like, damn, this guy is in for some serious fucking regression, because it is very hard to get 8% rate at the passing touchdowns every single year. So he's going to go back down. But 4.2, it should be around that 5 mark this season, you would think. So that would be a lot better for Matt Ryan, obviously, and he should be throwing more touchdowns. He also only threw 11 interceptions on the season. He did have the highest level of interceptable passes at the quarterback position last season, though, with 38, but it's okay because Jameis Winston is back in the NFL, and he's back to take his throne as the guy that's going to throw the most amount of interceptable passes in 2021. I believe that with this defense still being very bad, defense still sucks in Atlanta. The offense is going to look to be throwing the ball a whole lot, and I believe that Matt Ryan is the king of consistency, so I'm very happy taking him as the quarterback 17, as a late-round guy that can easily finish as a top 10 quarterback at the end of the season, and you're going to be very happy with where you got him, because now your team's loaded with running backs, with wide receivers, and you have this quarterback that you can slot in every single week with a lot of upside. And if you're drafting a quarterback this late, you could say, you know what, fuck it, I want to pair another quarterback with him, and then you got a tandem of feeling pretty dangerous late on in the draft. And final player to be talking about in this video is tight end, now of the Seattle Seahawks, formerly of the LA Rams, underdog ADP, tight end number 15. So people are starting to understand that this guy has a lot of opportunity in Seattle. Gerald Everett, underdog ADP, pick 142.2, up 14.88 slots in the last week, tight end number 15. Last season in LA, Mr. Gerald finished as the tight end 24 in PPR, as well as in half PPR, and the tight end 26 in standard, playing in all 16 games, averaging 5.8 PPR points per game, 4.5 half PPR points per game, and 3.2 standard points per game, meaning from points per game perspective, he was the tight end 31 in PPR, 32 in half PPR, and 35 in standard, which obviously is not very good, but you have to, you know, put into perspective the situation he was in. He was not the clear tight end 1 on this team. Tyler Higbee was ahead of him, and the exit of Everett elevates Everett, obviously, in Seattle to be the tight end 1 there, which he should be, and it also elevates Tyler Higbee to be the clear tight end number 1 in LA, because even though Higbee had an explosive 2019 NFL season, they still couldn't not use Everett at all on the field, because Everett is actually a talented tight end. Last season on the stat sheet, he had 61 total targets, 41 receptions, 417 receiving yards, and 2 total touchdowns on the season. But now in Seattle, it's a whole different thing here, because he is the true tight end 1 on this team. Russell Wilson in the past has thrown to a tight end that has a decent amount of skill, and if Gerald Everett does have the skill that I believe he does have, then Seattle should be a nice home for him. I do expect Everett to easily be able to crack the top 12 in fantasy football this season if the cards do go correctly. Now, as someone who's a little bit more optimistic about Seattle, I expect there to be a couple of games next season where there are down games, because Pete Carroll is munching on his gum and he decides to just run the ball a bunch in the games, and sure, that will happen. But that happens with a lot of tight ends in fantasy football. A lot of these late round flyers, they're going to have some shit games, but overall at the end of the season, I think that Everett is going to be a guy that was going very, very late, basically undrafted in a majority of leagues, and does have that upside to crack the top 10, and that's just on Underdog, where he's tight end 15. On most websites, Yahoo, ESPN, NFL, this guy's like tight end 23 off the board, which just makes absolutely no fucking sense because of how good of a player he is, and the fact that Russell Wilson does like to throw the ball to the tight end position. So thank you guys all so much for watching this video. If you did end up enjoying at any point, please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Again, not only is it free, I put out content every single day to help you guys win your 2021 Fantasy Football Championships. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love you guys all. Let me know down below if you you liked a different player at each position that you think you want to talk about in the comment section. I will happily reply. I love you guys all. Make sure you stay safe. Happy Monday. We're having a great week this week. I love you guys all. Stay safe. Goodbye.